This is the Prestigious Initiative. Welcome. I'm Chris Bean. Today we have joining with us Mr. Jim Marshall. Jim Marshall is the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural laws of Septemics. And Jim, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then we'll jump right into the scale for today.
Okay, Chris. Well, as Chris said, I discovered this natural phenomena, which I use to construct a revolutionary practical philosophic system called Septemics, and published it in the book Septemics Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. And today we're going to discuss some of the content of that book.
Very good.
Okay, well, this is the scale of justification. This book has 35 such scales, which span the spectrum of human experience. Everybody justifies at some time. The question is at what level? There is appropriate justification and inappropriate justification. Now, this is a spiral scale, meaning there is an apparent congruence between levels 1 and 7. If you look at the scale, you'll see 1 says no justification, and 7 also says no justification. But at 7, there's no attempt at justification. And at 1, no justification is needed. This is a tremendous difference. It's the widest possible disparity. A person at 7 is in despair. Because he's in despair, he makes no attempt to justify. A person at 1 lives with the truth. He doesn't need to justify anything because it's just the truth. So you have to be careful not to mix those two up. That's a catastrophic error in evaluating people using this material. Okay, now this is a quantum scale, meaning there is no gradation between the levels. You're either at 1 or you're at 2. There's nothing in between. And this is a specific scale, meaning this relies on a context of some kind. There has to be some context. There's no general meaning to this. For example, how does a person justify as regards his job? How does he justify as regards his wife? How does he justify as regards his club? How does he justify regards his religion, and so forth? So these are specific. You have to have a context for this to make sense. All right, now looking at the vertical dotted line on the right, what are we measuring with this scale? We're measuring cause and effect. Above level 1 is total cause, which is an unattainable absolute. And below level 7 is total effect, which is also an unattainable absolute. So you can get very close, but you can't get all the way as a human. Now, that's what this is about. So a person who is more causative is at or near the top of the scale, and a person who's at effect is at or near the bottom of the scale. So needless to say, you want to be at cause, because when you are at cause, you're getting the result you want. So let's say you have a football player, and he's a halfback, and they give him the ball, and he runs. Well, he wants to gain yardage. Okay, so to the degree that he does that, he's at cause. He's causing the effect that he wants to create. And if he doesn't get anywhere, if he gets tackled before he gets to the line of scrimmage, he's at the effect of the opposing players. So how the person justifies is monitored by how causal he is in the area. Now, there's, as in many cases, I should say in many scales, there is the horizontal line which separates the top from the bottom. Now, in this case, you're separating responsibility from irresponsibility. So a person who is at level 5, 6, or 7 is irresponsible, more so as he descends. A person who's at 1, 2, or 3 is responsible, more so as he ascends. A person who is at 4 is really not particularly responsible or irresponsible. It's neutral. So let's go through these. So a person is in despair. doesn't justify anything. So let's say a criminal, a bank robber, he gets caught by the cops. He's in handcuffs. The cops take him and they want to interrogate him. They want to find out who gave him the information, who his accomplices are, who was going to accept the money, and so forth. Right? So a criminal who's in comparatively good state will give some kind of a justification. Like he'll say, well, you know, I really needed the money. I couldn't pay my rent, or they were going to take away my house, and that type of thing. And that actually plays well in a court of law. But if a guy's at the bottom, he doesn't even attempt to justify it. He gives no justification at all because he's in despair. They got me. I'm going away. I'm going to be in prison. There's nothing I can do about it. He's in despair. So he doesn't even give a justification, even if he has one. Up from that is by computation. Now, what do I mean by computation? This is something the person thinks up. This is a fixed idea. Why did you beat your wife? Because all women are the same, or because all women are dishonest, or because you can't trust women. See, that's a fixed idea. This is something that he has thought up, and he sort of drags this out as a fixed idea whenever the subject comes up. Okay, well, you have such a pretty wife. Why did you cheat on her? Well, you can't trust women, or women are no good. He has some dopey idea like that, and that's his fixed idea. So that's how he justifies it. You see, his friend says, why'd you cheat on your wife? He says, well, because women are no good. It's a fixed idea. Somewhere along the line, he got this idea, and it's stuck in his mind. And if you watch this person, he will drag this out. Like 6 months later, to say, well, what'd you get your wife for Valentine's Day? I didn't get her anything. Well, why is that? Women are no good. See, he does the same thing. It's the same fixed idea. He just drags it out again. And every time you ask him to justify about women, that's what he does. Now, he also might have more than one. He could have several of them and alternate. The point is that it's a fixed idea, and he's not thinking. He's just presenting this data. It's like, the teacher says, all right, I'd like to see a show of hands, and guys put up their hands in the class. It's like that. It's like there's no thinking involved. You just do this thing. So that's not as irresponsible as despair, but it's still very irresponsible because you're essentially blaming somebody else. Okay, up from that is logic. Now we're getting into the realm that most people commonly do. Okay, a guy will sort of reason it out. Why did you leave your wife? Well, I kind of figured that she was cheating on me anyway, and it was only a matter of time before she was going to divorce me, and we weren't getting along. So I thought, well, I'm at no point in just prolonging the agony, so I'll just leave her. See, there's some logic there. It's not merely a fixed idea. He's sort of thinking about it. So this is still irresponsible because he's giving a reason for something. In other words, he's justifying it, but he's justifying it by some kind of logic. So that's still somewhat irresponsible. Obviously, it's not as bad as sex. Like the judge says to the defendant, well, why did you hit the jeweler in the head with your gun? And he will work it out. Say, well, I was afraid that he might have a weapon and he was reaching for it. And so I figured I better stop him before he shoots me. See, it's logic. Now, it's still irresponsible because you shouldn't have done that. And you'll see when I get to higher levels that a higher level person, a person who is not as at effect, would not give that answer. Okay, so then we come up to the neutral line, what you might call uh, the point of equilibrium. In many scales, at level 4, there's a point of equilibrium. So this is justifying by objective reality. So a guy says to you, stop, I want to go to the drugstore. I want to get some cough drops. Why do you want cough drops? Because I have a cough. See, that's objective reality. He's just telling you reality. Or, wait a minute, I have to go back and get my glasses, my sunglasses. Why do you need sunglasses? Because it's a bright, sunny day. See, his justification is reality. It's objective reality. It's something you can see. Okay? Or he'll say, oh, why are you taking that pill? Well, I have allergies and we're going to be going outside where there's pollen, so I'm going to take it now. And so that way the allergies won't have such a big effect on me. See, it's objective reality. He's just telling you what's there. He's telling you he has allergies and he's going out where there's pollen. So this is he's not really accepting responsibility in the sense that we're going to discuss in a few minutes, but he's also not shirking any responsibility. He's just giving you the facts. Now, up from that is justification by acceptance. Now, this is viewing. Now, here's what I mean by this. I noticed that your wife yelled at you when you came home. Why do you put up with that? Well, that's how she is. See, he just accepts it. You see, that takes responsibility. He's accepting some responsibility for her. In other words, he sees what's there, and it's just what he sees. It's not an objective reality. It's something that he sees. He's not saying, I'm covering my eyes because the sun is bright. That's 4. He's saying, well, maybe she had a hard day today, and that happens sometimes. See, so he views something in his life, and he accepts it. So he's taking some responsibility for it. Then above that is justification by responsibility. Well, I noticed that your wife is really not a good cook. Yeah, I know, but I love her, so I forgive her. See, he's assuming responsibility. In other words, there's enough responsibility there that the level is called by responsibility. That's a lot of responsibility to accept. So what happened to your car? It smelled nice. I said, it smells terrible. Well, my little kid threw up in the car. Oh, well, did you yell at him for that? No, he's a little kid. I forgive him. You see, he just accepts responsibility for it. So when somebody does that, you can see that there's a bond there. You see this, whenever there's a bond between people, that's how they will react. Like a guy's roommate gets drunk. Why are you tired? Well, my roommate came back late. He was drunk and he woke me up. Oh, well, why do you put up with that? Well, he's a nice guy and I forgive him. You see, he's being responsible for this guy. And the top is no justification is needed because it's the truth. Somebody says something and you say, okay. Like somebody says, oh, I saw you at that dance and you were with some young lady. And he says, right. He's not justifying it. He's not saying anything about it. Now the guy who said that might expect him to say, well, yeah, and give some explanation, you see. He just says, okay, yeah, it's the truth. So when a person lives with the truth, no justification is needed. So you see this in a very causative person. Okay? So, like, everyone orders dessert, the guy orders nothing. So his girlfriend says to him, I noticed you didn't order any dessert. He says, yeah, that's right. See, it's the truth. Now, if she said to him, why? Then he might say, well, I don't eat sugar. So that's where you want to be. That is a very unburdened place to be because you don't have to say anything. You just say, yeah. Someone will say, I notice you're a very pushy person at work. The guy says, yeah, he is. He's not justifying it. It's his business. He's got all his employees. He's trying to meet a time schedule. He's trying to meet a budget. He's pushy. He knows he's pushy. That's his job. He's causative about this. So that's how this works. Any questions?
No, no, very good. Thank you.
So this is valuable. This is valuable if you are deciding if you want to hire somebody or if you want to go out with somebody. Listen to what they say. Like if you're talking to a girl and she says, "Well, I'm free tonight because I decided not to go out with Joe." Well, why is that? Well, all men are the same. See, that's not somebody you want to date. She's at level 6. She has a fixed idea. You're going to have trouble with that person. So, and it's true on the upper end too. If you see a person who assumes responsibility, I noticed there was a brawl last night in the barracks. Yeah, the men, they were off, they had liberty, they got drunk, they had a fight. That's okay. I forgive him. See, nobody gets in trouble. So that's a drill sergeant who he likes his men. He forgives them. He understands that that's what soldiers do. So you should use this. It's very useful. Next. Okay, scale of belief. Now, this is one of the latter scales that I discovered because I'm not really much on belief. Belief is only necessary in the absence of knowledge. If you have knowledge, belief is not necessary. So, for example, if you ask me about, well, what's the acceleration of gravity near the surface of the Earth? I'm going to tell you it's 10 meters per second per second. That is not a belief. It is a scientific fact. You don't have to take my word for it. Go out and calculate it yourself. There's no belief involved in that. That's knowledge. Okay? Or like, what is the area for, what is the formula for the area of a circle? It's pi r squared. Okay? That's knowledge. Has nothing to do, you don't believe it. Belief is like when somebody says, oh, I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. That is a belief. That's not knowledge. Now, in order for it to be knowledge, this would have to be some super being who had gone to heaven and spoke to Jesus and was given that information. So he believes it. Now, most people live this way. Most people operate on belief, which is why I will not discuss politics or religion, because they both are based on belief. If you actually ask a person, well, what is it about Donald Trump you don't like? You're going to get gobbledygook most of the time because it's a belief. They just, well, he's a racist. That's a belief. There's no evidence whatsoever. I've been familiar with the Trump family since I was a boy, and I know for a fact Donald Trump is not a racist. Now, there are people who believe this. It's a belief. It has nothing to do with knowledge. That's what this is about. It's belief. Now, belief has 7 levels. This is a linear scale, meaning there's no apparent congruence between levels 1 and 7. It's a gradual scale, meaning you move gradiently from level to level. There's an infinitude of gradations between any two levels. And it's a specific scale, as is the case with most scales, meaning that it has to have a context. What is your belief regarding politics? What is your belief regarding religion? What is your belief regarding your family, and so forth? So a person could have different levels for different areas of his life, and generally does. Now let's look at the dotted vertical line on the right. What are we measuring here? We're measuring trust and control. Above level 1 is complete trust and control. Now, complete trust and control is an unattainable absolute. You can get very close. You can get maybe 99.999%. And at the bottom, below level 7, is no trust or control. And again, human beings don't really get to no trust or control, to some trust or control. Now, this tells you a lot because we're saying that trust and control come and go together. You see, if you can't control something, you can't trust it. So, for example, it's 2 outs and you have 2 runners on base in a baseball game, and the manager sends a pinch hitter up. Well, why is he doing it? He trusts this guy that he's not going to strike out, he's going to get a hit. And why can he do that? Because he can control his bat. You see? So trust and control sort of come and go together. So look at it in terms of policemen. Policemen are supposed to be trustworthy. They're supposed to be honest, and they are in control. So when the policeman says, step out of the car, you better trust him and get out of the car, or else you're going to get in a lot of trouble. Now, obviously, this breaks down when you have crooked policemen. So they're out of control. That would be another way of saying the same thing. So trust and control come and go together. And that is what belief is about. When you believe something, you trust in that thing. And so you have a high level of control relative to that thing. When you have disbelief, you have no control over that area. So you're, in a sense, you're shrugging the area. You don't trust it and you don't control it. So let's look at these. Disbelief. Now, as is often the case, the extremes of the scale are the ones that people have most difficulty understanding. This is the type of person who simply disbelieves. So this guy could say to you, well, you know, the world is 6,000 years old. Oh, really? Do you know anything about carbon dating? Oh, I have no faith in that. So he just disbelieves you. And you could say to him, well, no, there's this process called carbon dating that's been in use for many decades. It's scientifically verified. Anybody can learn how to do it. And it tells us the age of rocks. And so we have established conclusively that this rock is 250,000 years old. This rock is 300,000 years old. This rock is 80,000 years old. And so the world could not possibly have started 6,000 years ago. This guy will say, I don't believe you. I have no faith in carbon dating. In other words, he just disbelieves. Now, when you talk to somebody like this, it's very frustrating because there's no way you can convince them of anything. And, you know, like this is the type of person who'll say, well, of course, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. He was a Democrat. Excuse me, you're mistaken. He was not a Democrat. He was a Republican. He just doesn't believe you. He doesn't argue with you about it. He says, no, he was a Democrat. So this person has so little trust and so little control, he just disbelieves it, period. There is no discussion with this person. So this is a very frustrating person. You can't really have a conversation with this person because they just disbelieve. You know, if you say, well, Babe Ruth has the highest slugging percentage in baseball history. No, he doesn't. It's Roger Hornsby. So you can say, well, would you like to see the book that states this? The baseball? No, I don't want to see it. See, he has no faith in you, no faith in the book. He doesn't trust you. He has no control over this area. It's like his lack of control is so extreme, he won't even discuss it, even though he's completely wrong. So this is somebody you want to not be around. Up from that is cynicism. Now, this is using the word cynicism in quotations. It's not cynicism in the literal sense that it is meant in philosophical studies. And it means somebody who has very little faith. So this person, he might consider the possibility that there is something called carbon dating. And he might say, well, okay, maybe there is this thing, but I don't really know about it. So I don't really have faith in it because I didn't learn about it. See, so a person who's cynical has very little faith. That's why he's cynical. Up from that is skepticism. Now, a skeptic has little faith, not very little faith. So he's skeptical. Well, are you sure about this? How do you know this? Are you sure this book is a legitimate book that you read this in? See, he's skeptical. So he has little faith. He doesn't trust you much. He doesn't have much control over this area. But he's better off than 6 or 7. Then we come to the neutral point in the middle, which is called neutrality. This person is impartial. He doesn't believe and he doesn't disbelieve. So everybody enters this scale at level 4. You come into a new area. So let's say I'm going to give a talk on Jainism. Well, you might have somebody never heard of Jainism, doesn't know what it is, excuse me, doesn't know anything about it, never heard of it. He's at level 4. He's neutral. Now, if I give a good presentation, he might come up to level 3, where he has some faith in it. Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I can see that's a legitimate viewpoint. He comes up to 3. But everybody enters at 4 and either goes up or down. Now, when you get to 3, ingenuousness, this is a person who's honest, candid, forthright, and he has faith. So this is the person where the commanding officer gives him an order. He has faith that the commanding officer is giving him the right order and that it's a legal order and it's an order that should be followed. See, there's some ingenuousness there. He's sort of open to this. So he trusts him and he's allowing this control to occur. Up from that is confidence. Confidence means great faith. So a person who has confidence has great faith. So this is obviously a component of success. If you're going to get up and speak to 1,000 people, you have to have confidence that you can communicate to them. So you have great faith in your rhetorical abilities. In other words, you trust yourself that you're not going to get up there and make a fool of yourself. You have control over your ability to speak. And then at the top is belief. When you believe in something, you have complete faith in it. So when you have a devout Catholic or a devout Presbyterian or a devout Jew or any faith at all, they believe. Now, this carries over into politics too. You can have somebody that he's a devout Democrat, whatever the Democrats say, he has faith in it. Oh, well, Joe Biden said it, it must be true. See, he has trust and he allows control. He says, oh, well, they told me that this is good for us, so I'm accepting it. See, he's allowing control to occur. So that's how this works.
Very good. Very good. Shall we move to the next one then?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. Here we go.
Okay, scale of equanimity. So now this is a scale that took some years to figure out because if you look at the names of the levels, it looks like a scale of maturity. If you start with 7, 6, 5, 4, this is a person who's maturing. Well, equanimity corresponds to maturity. Now, we're not talking here in a physiological sense. I mean, you have an orange that's green, it's not mature yet. You come back in 2 weeks, it's actually orange, and then you can pick it and enjoy it. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about in human phenomena, in behavior. So when a guy behaves inappropriately, what do we say? Oh, he's immature. So you'll have some guy who, uh, insults people. People will say, yeah, he's immature. A mature person wouldn't do that. So equanimity it sort of means an evenness of mind. That's what it literally means, where your mind is calm. You're not easily enturbulated. A person who's equanimitous will not go to pieces when things go wrong. This is the guy who keeps his cool. So this is somebody you want, for example, in the military or in the police. So you're in combat, bombs are exploding, you're being attacked. The captain of that company has to maintain his equanimity. He has to use what he knows of military science and what he knows about his men and make the correct judgment. So if he's low on the scale, he shouldn't be an officer. And that is a lot of what they're developing in military academies. They want somebody who has equanimity. And so they subject you to challenges, difficult challenges, where you have to respond. So, for example, they will make the platoon stand at attention for an hour. If you ever stood at attention for an hour, you know it's not an easy thing to do. So somebody who is, see, that will develop equanimity, which is why they do it, but also requires some equanimity. So this is like the type of guy in ROTC will say, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm not standing at attention for an hour anymore. And he quits, he walks out. So he's not going to be an ROTC anymore. So this is one of the most important traits that a person can have. So when a boxer goes in the ring, he's being attacked. He has to maintain his equanimity. He can't, if he's fearful, he's not going to be able to do that. You have to be willing to be hit. You have to know what you're doing. You have to have a plan of attack. And this is true in many fields. When a musician goes on stage in front of 1,000 people, he must have equanimity or he's going to be flustered. So this is a very important trait. Now, this is a linear scale, meaning there's no apparent congruence between levels 1 and 7. It's a gradual scale, meaning there is an infinitude of gradations between each level. And it's a general scale, meaning a person has a level on the scale and you're done. This is not generally a context-driven thing. In other words, if a guy has equanimity in one thing, it carries over to the other thing. A guy is not going to be equanimitous in combat and then not be equanimitous when he's in a bowling match. Okay, that same equanimity is going to carry over to where he can bowl without getting flustered, without getting nervous. See, the guy who does not have equanimity, when he has to bowl, he's going to get nervous and his hands are going to shake and he doesn't do so good. So this is a general condition. Now, you could argue that there are occasional circumstances where a person might have a different level of equanimity in a different context, but that's so rare, it kind of is not worth discussing. Because generally, this is a persistent trait. A person is either equanimitous or not. So let's say you have a kid who's a brat, right? That's level 6. He's a bratty kid. That's it. He's a bratty kid. That's what you have to deal with. He's not going to just stop being bratty because he goes to kindergarten. Maybe the kindergarten teacher will handle him better, but he's still a bratty kid. So what are we measuring with this? This is important. The dotted vertical line. This is self-control, security, and emotional stability. Well, all of those are very important traits, and they are all encompassed in the word equanimity. When a person has equanimity, it means he has self-control, he's secure, and he's emotionally stable. At the bottom, we have no self-control, security, or emotional stability. And again, that is an unattainable absolute at both extremes. So an infant, say you have an infant, literally an infant, right? You have a 1-week-old baby. Well, he's infantile. Of course he's infantile. He's an infant. He has no self-control. He's not secure. He has no emotional stability. So if there's a loud noise, that's enough to make him cry. Somebody slams the door, he cries. You see, he's not emotionally stable. He's not secure. If you say boo, that might be enough to make him cry. He has no self-control. He can't control much of anything. He has to be taken care of. So those are the two extremes. So if you can find somebody at the top of the scale, that is somebody you want around you, regardless of whatever else is going on, because this person has self-control, he's secure, and he's emotionally stable. These are rare traits. So let's go through this starting at the bottom. So we sort of covered the infant. A person is infantile, is disoriented. That's what infantileness is. An infant is disoriented. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know what day of the week it is. He doesn't know what his name is. He doesn't know much of anything. He's really disoriented. So you could have a person who's not an infant who's like that. So you have somebody who behaves that way, and you say, well, he's infantile. Okay, that's infantile behavior. That person is disoriented. He doesn't know which end is up. Up from that is brattiness. Okay, this is a little more equanimity. Now, a brat is someone who's spoiled. There are many adult, beautiful women who are at this level. In case you haven't noticed, there are billions of men who will do anything for a beautiful woman. They fall all over themselves, you know. That is the old cliche. She drops the handkerchief and the guy runs right in and picks it up for her. Or she brings out a cigarette and the guy lights it for her, right? Because she looks like Lana Turner or Hedy Lamarr or whatever. So this person is going to be spoiled. I just ran into one of these recently on the internet. This was a gorgeous woman, gorgeous, okay, conspicuously gorgeous. So I sort of tried interacting with her, and she was like a spoiled brat. There's no other way to say it. She had no equanimity. You know why? Nobody ever put her in her place. She probably was a beautiful little girl. She was probably this beautiful little 3-year-old girl with big eyes, you know, and curly hair that everybody loved. And she went through a whole life like that. So this happens more with women than it does with men because of the way men are. It's really the fault of men. And this is where trophy wives come from, right? So you have the billionaire, and his wife is Miss Georgia, 22-year-old, beautiful woman, right? And she says, oh, I don't want to go to that restaurant. I don't like their fork. Okay, dear, we won't go there. We'll go to another restaurant. Oh, yes, let's go to the one that has the nice forks. See, she's spoiled. So in case you don't know, what spoiled means is somebody has been never disciplined, never given any limits. That is what a brat is. A brat is someone who's spoiled. Now, out from that is childishness. So we would say, well, that's childish. No. Oh, I'm afraid to go into the room because the light is not on. And you say, well, that's childish. Just go in there and turn on the light. You see? So what do we mean by childishness? We mean immatureness. Person is not bratty, but still immature. And there are many people who are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s who are childish. For example, it's a cliche that, I actually had a girlfriend once, and she lived in a beautiful rural area, expensive area where there were all kinds of trees and deer and everything else. And a mouse got in the house. And she said, oh, would you take care of it for me? Sure. I killed a mouse and got rid of it. She couldn't do it, So to me, that is a type of immatureness. Now, this was a person in their 50s who was renting an $800,000 house. Okay. So you think they would be able to get a broom and chase it out or something? No, couldn't do it. Had to have me do it. And this goes even further. Oh, there's a spider in the bathtub. Would you take care of it for me? Okay. I swat it and get rid of it. So that's just childish. Now, adolescence. So what do we see in adolescence? Adolescents are rebellious, in case you haven't noticed. They are starting to be adults and they're testing the limits. They want to see what they can get away with. So they will pull things on the teachers and the parents. And if you don't come down on them, they will give you a lot of trouble. You have to set limits. You have to say no. Okay, you're not going to raise your voice to your mother. I don't care what she said. Say whatever you want to say in a civil way because she's your mother. Tell her what you think, but you're not going to yell at her. See, that's what you get from an adolescent who's rebellious. You have to squelch that, and that gets him to grow up. So then we come to adultness. Well, what is adultness? It means grown-upness. Person acts like an adult. So, if you have a guy, he's living with his parents, he doesn't have a job, he doesn't have a girlfriend, he doesn't have a car, that's not an adult. I don't care how old he is. Okay? Now, if he's 14, okay, well, he's an adolescent. We expect adolescents to be in that condition. If you have a 35-year-old guy in that condition, he's not an adult. Okay? He's not grown up. He doesn't act like a grown-up. So we see these in people who have something developmentally wrong with them, have some sort of a brain problem or some kind of an emotional problem. They just never grow up. So you say something to them they don't like and they cry. Well, an adult wouldn't do that. An adult would say, well, why do you say that? All right, tell me what you think, whatever. So that's adultness. Now, above that is maturity. A mature person is complete. This is a distinct feeling. When you get to this level, you feel complete. Before this, your life is not complete. You sort of feel, well, I'm still paying my mortgage. I'm still making car payments. I'm still 25 pounds overweight, whatever it is. The guy, he's adult, but he's not mature. A mature person feels complete. In other words, he is what he feels he should be. He is what he wants to be. He's complete. Okay? So he owns his house outright. He owns his car outright. He has a reputation in his business and so forth. He is a complete person. Okay? He has some kind of significant other. He has a personality that people can recognize. He's mature. And above this is wisdom. Well, what is wisdom? Wisdom is calmness. If you observe wise people, you will see that they are calm, which is why Jesus, while he was being tortured to death on the cross, was able to say, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Or if you look at somebody like uh, Paramahansa Yogananda, okay, he was a very calm person. Uh, when you see a calm person, you see wisdom, because it requires wisdom in order to be calm. So the person puts a loaded gun in your face and you don't go to pieces, you're showing wisdom. You're showing some sense that this is not the time to speak up. This is the time to go along with it. Or, okay, that's what you're doing. I'm not going to go to pieces. So this is a person who is not going to have a nervous breakdown. He's not going to lose his temper. And all of that is the result of wisdom. Well, what is it? What is wisdom? Wisdom is self-control, security, and emotional stability. So all of these things, those three things, are packed into this word equanimity. So this was quite a coup figuring this out. That because normally we think of these as separate things. In other words, say, well, this guy's emotionally stable, this guy's secure, and this guy has self-control. Well, those are three different axes, and that is true. But there is a package called equanimity in which all of this exists together, which is why this is such a big deal. This is one of the most important scales to use. You spot somebody, and believe me, it's not that hard to spot somebody. Just watch the person, and you'll see. You know, you have some 40-year-old guy who acts like a teenager. He smokes pot, he speeds in his car, he yells at his mother. You know, well, that's what adolescents do. This guy is not mature. He's not even really an adult. He's just an overgrown adolescent. So this is very valuable. I advise you to use this in selecting people. You know, you want to observe people and see if this person has equanimity, you want to find a way to keep them around you as an employee, as a partner, as a mate, or what have you. Any questions?
No questions. Very useful, very applicable, very good.
Next. Okay, the scale of attack. Now, a lot of people are going to look at this and say, what? Scale of attack? What are you talking about? And this is actually absolutely vital to know about. This is a scale that most people have no concept of. This is a linear scale, meaning there's no apparent congruence between 1 and 7. It's a quantum scale, meaning these levels are discrete. There's nothing in between these levels. And that is why if a person advances or declines, there's an instantaneous change. So you'll see somebody, for example, who's at level 2, he has some traumatic event, and he goes down to level 3. So let's say you have a guy, he's in the military, right? He's willing to attack. So, you know, he's at, let's say, Guadalcanal fighting with the Marines, right? And he has some terrible incident that occurs. His changes his personality, he goes down, becomes unwilling to attack, he becomes a pacifist. It's instantaneous. Now, this is a specific scale, meaning it has a context. So a person's willingness to attack might be excellent in one area and terrible in another area. So, for example, you might find a guy who's physically willing to attack. You know, if you call him names, he'd say, okay, let's go out on the street and straighten this out. See, he's willing to have a fist fight with you. But in another context, he might not be. So you put him out, have him go out on a date with a girl, and all of his bravery evanesces. He's not brave at all. You see, he's unwilling to attack. This is not that unusual. This is like the bully who allows his girlfriend to sort of push him around because he's not going to attack. He's not going to defend himself. If a person is abusive to you, it is appropriate to say, don't try to pull that on me. It's abusive and I don't deserve that. See, that takes some willingness to attack. That's like a small verbal attack. It's a diplomatic way of attacking, but it's still an attack. So you see, this is important. So you have on the right the behavior of the person. So a person who's at level 1 or 2 is a courageous person. Needless to say, there aren't too many of these. A person who's at level 3, 4, or 5 is a cowardly person. That is the majority of society. And a person who's at 6 or 7 is suicidal. He's not merely cowardly, he's suicidal. Now, these correspond perfectly to sane, neurotic, and psychotic. Of course, if a person is suicidal, that's psychotic. I mean, killing yourself is as crazy as you can get. Now, a person in the middle section, cowardly, well, that's what a neurotic person is. A neurotic person is cowardly. And again, remember, this is specific. So, the person is cowardly in some context. It's another way of saying he's neurotic. He's not psychotic, he's neurotic. And the sane person is the one who's courageous. So this tells you a lot. If a person is sane, he will have courage. That doesn't mean he's reckless. That's a different thing. But he's courageous. So this is a person who, a sane person, he's got a family, a snake comes in the house, he's going to get rid of that snake, period. Okay? He's not going to run away. That's what a neurotic person will do. This person is sane enough to say, I can't allow this snake to be a threat to my wife and children, and he'll get out a baseball bat and kill it. Okay? Takes some courage. So that's what the mental state and the behavior are about. So this tells you a lot about a person. This is why this is so important. If you can correctly spot a person, and believe me, it's not that hard, on any of one of these levels, it tells you if he's sane, if he's neurotic, or if he's psychotic, and correspondingly, if he's courageous, if he's cowardly, or if he's suicidal. So if you're going to make somebody an officer in the military or even in a police organization, that person better be courageous. He's going to have to face some things. And he's not going to be able to face them if he's not sane, because crazy people are neurotic, and because they're neurotic, they're cowardly. So let's start at the bottom. The lowest level is must not be attacked. This is a hysterical person. If you've ever seen a hysterical person clutching their pearls and wringing their hands and crying, oh, what shall we do? We must not be attacked. Okay? So that is actually a suicidal position, because nothing attracts aggression like hysteria. It is well known that with animals, if an animal senses fear in you, you are in a lot of trouble. Now, I get along great with animals because I can confront them sanely and just see, hello, dog. I don't know your name, but I'm here and you're there and I'm no threat to you. That's sort of how I look at it. And so I get along with them. And this goes a long way. Up from hysteria is masochism. Masochism is must be attacked. Now, why is masochism above hysteria? Must be attacked is, of course, crazy. We recognize masochism as a type of psychosis. But a person who's hysterical is completely psychotic. He's not merely masochistic. He's to do anything. So this is like the type of person who will totally go to pieces, crying and screaming and running around. And that person, in a sense, is saying, I'm already defeated, which is a suicidal intention, which is crazier than masochism. So if you were to have a person at 7 and give him some therapy, he would go up to being masochistic. He would improve to being masochistic. So masochism relative to hysteria is an improvement. Then we cross the horizontal line and we go into the cowardly band. Well, the bottom of cowardly is cannot attack. This person lives in fear. This person is so afraid that he cannot attack. So like this is the person who is afraid of spiders. You know, the spider weighs like, what, 100th of a gram, right? And you weigh 200 pounds and you're afraid of the spider. That's neurotic. You see, that doesn't make any sense at all. All you have to do is get a newspaper and go, SWAT, that's the end of the spider. I don't care how big it is. You know, some spiders can be several grams. Still, compared to a human, it's insignificant. So if you cannot attack, you are in fear. That is what fear is. Fear is the state of being unable to attack. So that is an extreme state of neuroses and cowardliness. Above that is must attack. This is the bully. The bully is belligerent. You know, the guy who has a chip on his shoulder. He goes into a bar and he's ready to have a fist fight with the first guy who disagrees with him. It's a belligerent attitude. So this guy must attack. This is what you saw in Hitler. Hitler's attitude was must attack. He was belligerent. So that is neurotic. Must attack is not as crazy as cannot attack, but it's still crazy. And it's well known that bullies are cowards. I don't know if you've experienced this, but a guy who's a bully, if you stand up to him and show him that you're not going to be intimidated, he'll back down. Up from that is unwilling to attack. This is the pacifist. Now, unwilling to attack. So this is the person who he gets a mosquito in his house. He doesn't want to attack the mosquito. He's unwilling to attack the mosquito. Mosquitoes are predators. They sting people. They can bite you many times. They can give you malaria. Okay? So that's a neurotic person. A pacifist is a neurotic person. He's not sane enough to be courageous. Now, he's not as neurotic as level 4 or level 5. So he's cowardly, but he's cowardly in a more reasonable way. He says, oh, I don't want to attack anybody. So then we go across the line and we come up into the courageous level and we come to somebody who's willing to attack. Okay? If you are not willing to attack, you have no business being a policeman or being in the military. Now, when I say the military, of course, there are people in the military who don't do any attacking, like the cook, the yeoman who types letters, you know. But if you're actually, you know, in a combat situation, you better be willing to attack. So let's say we have a guy on a ship, a naval vessel, and the ship is attacked. Well, they have to fight. This guy better be willing to attack. No, maybe he's in the radio room, you see? But if he's not willing to attack, he lacks courage, and you're going to have trouble with this guy. This guy, instead of sending the message, will be hiding under the table. Not somebody you want on a combat ship. And above willing to attack is no need to attack. No need to attack is objectivity. Now, how does that work? If you can be objective, you can see there's no need to attack. So this is like a diplomatic person. diplomatic person who can get between the warring parties and say, okay, now let's look at this for a minute. Think about how much money you're going to spend. Think about how many lives you're going to lose. Think about how this is going to affect your GDP. And he can get them to be objective and say, yeah, this is not a good idea. So let's make peace. So that's what diplomacy is about. So the diplomat is hopefully someone who has no need to attack. He doesn't want there to be an attack. So this is somebody who can, like a mediator, who can come between two parties and say, now look, before this goes to trial, let's see if we can settle this. Because if it goes to trial, you're both going to spend 5 figures on lawyers, which is going to hurt both of you. So if we can settle it now, you don't have to spend that money, and maybe we can make some sort of a reasonable compromise. Many times I have had problems with people, and this is my approach. I talk to the guy, I negotiate with him, and we settle. You know, like an insurance company, I've negotiated with people in insurance companies. They know that I had a loss, I'm insured, I'm entitled to some money, and we have a talk about it. And they say, okay, I'll give you 10,000. Okay, I'll take that. See, rather than going to court and dragging it out for 5 years. So in order to have that type of non-combatant status, you have to be objective. Now, if you are at must attack, that person is not objective. He's busy being belligerent. The person at number 3, level 3, he also is not objective, but he is in sort of a fixed state of we must not fight. So that is not necessarily a good place to be, because you will easily and frequently be attacked if you take that stance. Now, the person at 5 can't function at all. He's totally controlled by fear. So he's going to have a hard time. He's not going to be able to function. So this is very important, and it really tells you a lot about the person. So when they say that somebody is a coward or somebody is yellow, which is a colloquialism for a person who's cowardly, that is definitely not complimentary. And you're talking about somebody who's neurotic, probably. And when you get to crazy people, they're down at 6 or 7. Any questions?
No questions. Very good. Very helpful. Very well explained, and obviously very, very useful for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, the scale of conflict. So this is very important in understanding when you have a conflict. Now, everybody deals with conflict. It could be marital conflict. It could be a conflict between 2 corporations. It could be a conflict between 2 countries, between 2 sports teams. Conflict is inherent in human life. It's virtually unavoidable. I mean, if you're born rich and you just stay in your house and never go out, you can avoid it, but you still might have a conflict with the butler. So you need to know this because there are levels of conflict. And this is about how do you deal with conflict? How are you dealing with the conflict? Now, this is a spiral scale, meaning there is an apparent congruence between 1 and 7. Don't make that mistake. It's very easy to confuse level 7 and 1. Level 1 is no conflict, and level 7 is also no conflict. But at level 7, it's no conflict is possible. And at level 1, there's no need for a conflict. Completely different. Person at level 7 is in denial. No conflict is possible because he's in denial. So this is like the guy who's in a horrible marriage, and you say, how's your marriage? Okay. it's not okay. You can see the way they treat one another, that this is not a good marriage. So he's just in denial. He's not even up to accepting the fact that there's conflict there. There has to be some conflict there, or they wouldn't have a bad marriage. So this is like Chamberlain went to Munich in 1938, famously got off the airplane with a piece of paper signed by Hitler saying peace in our time. Well, Hitler just made a fool of him. Hitler was just buying time so he could prepare for war. So Chamberlain was blissfully in denial. His colleague, Churchill, was not. Churchill was saying, for years, Hitler is a threat. He has to be stopped. He was not in denial. And of course, if there's no need for a conflict, that's where we have peace. That is what peace is. Peace is no need for conflict. Now, this is a gradual scale, meaning there's an infinitude of gradations between each of the levels. And it's a specific scale, meaning it has a context. So you could have one level regarding the conflict in your marriage, another level regarding the conflict at work, another level regarding the conflict in a political party. So what are we measuring here? We're measuring responsibility. The vertical dotted line goes at the top from complete responsibility, which is what we mean when we say cause, down to no responsibility, which is what we mean when we say effect. So if a person is at effect, he's going to be at or near the bottom of the scale. If a person is at cause, he's going to be at or near the top of the scale. So this tells you that a person who is besieged is not assuming a lot of responsibility. There's a story about Richard Nixon famously had an enemies list. And he resigned and was replaced by Gerald Ford. And Gerald Ford, when he heard about the enemies list, said, well, anybody who has that many enemies that he has to keep it on a list has too many enemies. I mean, which is kind of stating the obvious, but he made a good point. Because in the end, those enemies brought Nixon down. So this is about responsibility. This is a new idea. Now, if somebody is at or near the bottom of the scale, he does not accept responsibility. You see, like the guy I said who has a bad marriage, you say, how's your marriage? He says, fine. He's in denial. He's not accepting any responsibility for the conflict in his marriage. He just says it doesn't exist. Up from that is defeated. This person is defeated, meaning he's been dominated. So this person has enough responsibility to face the fact that he's been defeated. So he's an effect point, but not to the point where he's in denial about it. Up from that is losing. When you're losing, you're struggling. Person who's struggling with anything is losing in that context. So losing is more responsible than being defeated. You haven't been defeated yet. You're still struggling with it. In other words, you're making an attempt. That's where the responsibility comes in. You're making some attempt to fight whatever it is that threatens to defeat you. Up from that is the stalemate. So here again, we have your equilibrium point where the two sides are evenly matched. Nobody is winning, nobody is losing. So in general, in nature, all points of equilibrium are fragile. And nature tends to abhor equilibrium. In other words, it's rare to see anything stay in equilibrium. And so a stalemate eventually is going to go one way or the other. But this is sort of like the turning point. Okay, you're not losing and you're not winning. So this is where you have a boxing match and right to the very end, nobody can tell who's going to win. It's kind of a stalemate. And this is where you get a split decision. Up from that, you have winning. Well, what is winning? Winning is success. When you're successful because you're winning. This takes a lot of responsibility. This is why most businesses fail. Because in order to have a business, you have to be responsible. People who are not entrepreneurs have no idea how hard it is to run a business. Most people just get a check and at the end of the week, and that's it. But a person who is actually running a business and winning, that person is a very responsible person. Up from that is victorious. He has already won. He's not merely successful, he's dominant. Okay? So this is the guy who just won the Masters, or he just won the World Series or something. He's victorious. Okay? He is the dominant person. Or like somebody who was just awarded the most valuable player in the American League. He's the dominant player. He's victorious. So this is a person who has assumed an enormous amount of responsibility. Now, again, downscale people are not going to understand this. They have no idea how much work is involved. Ted Williams, who most baseball experts agree was the greatest hitter who ever lived, would complain. People would say, "Oh, you have so much talent." And his response was, "What about all the work?" I mean, Williams was out there batting and batting and batting from when he was a kid. He was devoted to this. And that's what you find in these people. A boxer goes into training before a match. He devotes his whole life, 24 hours a day, to getting ready for this boxing match. That is a high level of responsibility. And he has to do many things that are difficult in order to prepare himself. And at the top is no need for conflict, which is peace. So this is the person who is a peaceful person. He assumes complete responsibility and he has peace. So let's say, the wife says, "Oh, I have to have a mink coat." So he assumes complete responsibility and buys her a mink coat. She's happy. So that keeps peace in the family. His idea is, there's no need for conflict here. I'll just buy the mink coat. So a person who is further down scale won't handle it that way. A person who is at this level has a peaceful life. He's not being sued. He's not being chased. He's not being indicted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is a very, very responsible person. And this tells you this is somebody you want in your life. So if you're interviewing a guy, say, "Anybody suing you? Are you hiding out from anybody? Had any fistfights lately?" You want there to be no to all of this. That's somebody you want to hire because he's a responsible person. He's responsible enough to see there's no need for a conflict. So he goes into a bar and a guy says, "Oh, you're one of those liberals. We don't want you here." So instead of getting in a fight with the guy, says, "Okay, I'll finish my beer and I'll go." See, that's no need for conflict. He doesn't care if the guy doesn't like his political beliefs or not. Or even if he does care, he's a peaceful person. He's not going to take the bait. That is the responsible way to handle it. So if somebody comes up to me and says, "You're a bum and I'm going to beat you up," I say, "Well, why would you want to say that? What's the issue here? Let's discuss this." You see, you're assuming responsibility for this guy, even though he's aggressive, mean, probably stupid. You're assuming responsibility. So the wife is crying. "Oh, I'm so unhappy. I don't want to continue our marriage." Okay, well, tell me about it. See, you don't argue. You don't dominate her. You say, "Tell me about it." And you assume responsibility. I see you want to go out once a week. Okay, we'll do that. We'll start going out once a week. See, he assumes responsibility and he has peace. Now, of course, you have to be very causative. You have to be able to afford to go out once a week. You have to be able to afford to buy the wife a mink coat. So, the type of guy who puts himself in a position where he can afford to spend $40,000 on a mink coat for his wife, how did he get there? He must be a very responsible person in order to have that. He has worked very hard for a very long time, right? He got a doctorate. He is a tenured professor now. He's published books. His royalties coming in. See, all that takes responsibility. So that tells you a lot about the person. If somebody says, "Oh, I've been defeated and there's nothing I can do about it," you don't want that guy on your team. You want somebody who's going to have a positive attitude, who's going to want to assume enough responsibility to be successful. This is the guy who, if he's selling door to door, will knock on 10,000 doors. And there was a time when I was in business and I would have all these contracts coming in, business, lots of business. And people would say to me, "How do you do this? How do you get all this business?" Well, this was before the internet. I was either initiating or receiving approximately 300 phone calls and letters a week. Okay, that's a lot. I didn't say that. I just said, I just smiled. Okay. So, in other words, I assumed a lot of responsibility. Okay. So, here's a list of 1,000 prospects. I'm going to call up all of these prospects. That takes a high level of responsibility. A guy who's irresponsible will say, "Oh, I don't want to do that. I want to go to a movie." Right? Well, maybe he'll call 100 people and then go to the movie. The responsible guy will call all 1,000 people. He might not be able to do it all in one day, but he will do it. And that is the guy who will get the business. So he's winning. And eventually he'll be victorious. So that's how you use this.
Very good. Very good. Very easy to understand. Is there one more? Yeah, let's do this last one before we get to the group skills for today, and then that'll be a good stopping point.
Okay. This is extremely important. Let me explain this. Reaction is a non-volitional thing, as opposed to response. So somebody says, "You're an idiot," and you punch him in the nose. That's a reaction. Somebody says to me, "You're an idiot," I say, "What do you mean?" That's a response. Or, "Why would you say that?" Or I might say, "Oh, tell me about this." Well, what led you to this conclusion? You see, that's a response. That is not a reaction. We're talking about reaction here. So it is a lack of thought. Whenever there's a reaction, the cognitive factor is absent. So this is a linear scale, meaning there's no apparent congruence between 1 and 7. They're completely different. It's a quantum scale, meaning you go instantaneously from level to level. If you go from level 2 to level 3, there's perhaps a billionth of a second that takes that to occur. This is a specific scale, meaning it requires a context. So a person could have one position regarding his business, another position regarding his family, for example. Now, what are we measuring here? We're measuring affect. Reaction is about affect. The person who is most affected is at level 7. The person who is the least affected is at level 1. Now, a person who is not affected at all is not on the scale. He's not reacting. So if a person is not reacting at all, There is no affect. Now, everybody enters this scale at level 1. And then, to the extent that he is affected in this context, he descends the scale. So the first thing that happens is you're irritated, right? So you're walking down the street and your neighbor's dog barks at you in an aggressive way. This bothers you. You don't do anything about it, but it irritates you. You see, it has some effect on you. That's level 1. Now, the next thing below that is you protest it. So, meaning you say to your neighbor, I don't want your dog barking at me, keep him inside. You see, you're criticizing the neighbor. You're protesting the fact that the dog is barking at you. So you can be irritated, but say nothing about it. But once you start protesting, you're criticizing, you're at level 2. Now, the next thing that happens in this descent is that you get worried about it. This becomes a worry for you. You have some situation that's worrying you. So worry is a reaction. Anytime you're worried, it means you're reacting. So worry and anxiety mean essentially the same thing. So worried means you're anxious. So when psychologists talk about a person has anxiety, it means he's worried about something. So this is beyond protesting. He has internalized this thing into his mind, and he's going back and forth in his mind. What should I do? What should I say? I don't know what to think. I don't know what to do about this. Blah, blah, blah. He's worried. That's level 3. The next step down in affect is you rationalize it. You make up some rationalization. You say, well, my next door neighbor is an idiot, so what can I expect? So you're sort of justifying. So you don't rationalize until after you worry about it. You start worrying about it, and then you will rationalize it. So in a sense, you are coping with this affect by cognitively putting a justifier in place. So you say, you can't trust Jews. Okay, that's a rationalization. It's a justification. Okay, so the next door neighbor happens to be Jewish. So that's how he deals with this affect. You see, of course, that's a dopey thing to say, but realize you're down at level 4 now. There's a lot of affect here. The more affect there is, the less cogent the person is. The next thing he does is becomes upset, meaning he's shocked. So this is a person who loses his composure. Okay, he's beyond rationalizing it now. He's upset. He's agitated. And by this level, there is no point in discussing this with the person. It will do no good. Not only will it do no good, it will do more harm than good. You should not discuss it with an upset person. If a person is upset, you can let him talk if he wants to talk, but don't try to talk him out of being upset. Cannot be done because it's sitting on top of a rationalization, which is a fixed justification in his mind. Now, the next thing is the person goes from being upset to being shocked. Now, notice the word shocked is at levels 5 and 6. And that's because of a limitation of the English language. So upset is one thing and shocked is another. So when a person is stunned, he can't talk. He doesn't know what to say. You say something to somebody and they're speechless. Their mouth is open. Really? How can that be? I'm stunned. So that's beyond being upset. So upset is different from being shocked. Shocked means you're stunned. See, he's not agitated. He's actually sort of like in a frozen state. And acting out is where you just are dramatizing something. You're going through some motion of doing something that is a complete reaction. There's no thought involved in it. So this is like the type of guy, he loses his cool and he punches his wife. That's acting out. So let me give you an example of how this works. So the guy's wife says to him, you know, you really should be making more money. This irritates him, bothers him, right? He doesn't say anything about it. Now she says it to him enough times that he starts to protest. Don't tell me that. See, he's criticizing her now. I don't want to hear that. That doesn't help me. Mind your own business. See, the relationship is deteriorating because he's more affected. So now the next thing is he's going to start to worry about this. I'm worried about maybe I'm not making enough money. Maybe my wife will leave me. See, he has anxiety about this. That's more affect. And then he'll go into a rationalization and say, well, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Or women have no business getting involved in a husband's work. Some fixed idea. He will form a fixed idea that psychologically calms him down. See, he's not worried now because he's buried that worry under the rationalization. And these rationalizations are always dopey. I mean, he could rationalize it with a fact, but the fact that he's rationalizing it is not smart. In other words, he's not dealing with it in a rational way. There's a lot of affect here. The next thing that happens is he blows his stack. Right? The next time she does something he doesn't like, he screams at her, he curses her out. He says, if you don't like it, pack your suitcase and get the hell out. See, because at that point, he is shocked by her behavior. Her treatment of him is so horrible, it affects him so greatly, he's shocked by it, and so he gets upset. Now, if this continues, he'll go into being stunned. So this is the guy, he's just sitting in his living room doing nothing. And you go in and you say, Joe, what's going on? I thought we had an appointment for 7 o'clock. He says nothing. Oh, Joe, this is Ralph, Joe. We had an appointment. He says nothing. And you say, what happened? My wife left me. You see, he's stunned. That's beyond, he's not upset anymore. This is worse than being upset. He's stunned. And then if it gets worse, he'll do something crazy, like he gets a gun and he goes and shoots her. So when you see these crazy behaviors, like some guy thinks another guy is looking at his girlfriend, and so he physically attacks him, I don't think that doesn't happen. Things like that do happen. That guy's just acting out. He's acting out something. In other words, he is so far out of present time and space. He's just dramatizing something. He is so affected. This is beyond being shocked. He's not shocked anymore. He's acting. So this guy, you have a guy, he's sitting in his room, he's stunned. I can't get a job. Nobody likes me. He takes his high-powered rifle, goes up on the roof and starts shooting people. That's acting out. That's most affected. So realize when you have somebody doing this, you're dealing with a real Looney Tune. Okay? This person is just reacting. There's nothing cognitive really going on here. In other words, there's no reason, there's no rationality to a person who's acting out. He's so affected that he cannot function cognitively. If he could function, he wouldn't get a gun and start killing people, or he wouldn't take a knife and stab his wife. So there's all kinds of crazy things that people do when they're acting out. But this happens after the fact of the person being stunned. And if you talk to a person about his life, you will find this sequence had occurred in his life. Before he acted out, he was in a state of being shocked. In other words, you have a guy, he goes out and let's say he becomes a terrorist, okay, and kills people. Well, something stunned him to get him into that state before that. And before he was stunned, he was upset. Before he was upset, he was rationalizing. Before he was rationalizing, he was worried. Before he was worried, he was protesting. Before he was protesting, he was irritated. So everybody enters this at level one. And if you want to get somebody out of this affect, you have to work him back up this scale. And then he will leave the scale and there's no reaction at all. So when I was working as human development engineer, that's what I would see. The guy says, I don't have to pay attention to this. I don't care about this anymore. See, he's not reacting anymore. He can just laugh about it. But you had to work him back up, pick him up at the level he's at. Guy comes in, he's stunned. Well, why are you stunned? You're going to find an upset. See, my wife left. See, that upset him. Okay, and then you'll find before that there was a rationalization somewhere, like women are no good, and so forth. And so you can work the guy back up until he gets back up to where he has no reaction. Now, there's something in Chinese history called Wu Wei, which means no action or non-action. And this shows up in all of the Chinese religions, not just one. And this is how the ruler was expected to behave. He was expected to not react. So when I explain this to people, I practice Wu Wei. And when I explain this to people, I say, a better way to understand this is no reaction. So somebody screams at you and curses you out and yells at you, you just have no reaction. In other words, you don't even get irritated at it. That's no reaction. And that's how you stay off the scale. Because once you get onto the scale, there's a tendency to descend it. And then at the bottom, you wind up beating somebody to death and going to jail for manslaughter. So the way to live is to not react. So whatever happens, you just stay calm. You don't let it bother you. Okay? So for example, I had a cousin I was very close to. He was murdered. I grew up with this person. Okay. So everybody in the family was hysterical over this. I wasn't. You know why? I didn't react. So because I knew enough to say, I'm not going to react. I responded. I said nice things about him at the funeral, and I sent condolences and all that. I did all the right things. That's a response, but I did not react. So that's what you want to do. You want to not react, meaning you don't take the bait. People will try to draw you into some kind of a conflict. And if you don't react, it doesn't happen. So this is very useful. It's about not being affected by things. Don't let it bother you.
Very good. Hey, Jim, I think
Now,
that's a good space to hold for today. I think next time
yes,
when we come together, we'll have the group scales. And Jim, I want to say thank you. Thank you for your time, your dedication to this, and the ease at which you can explain this information. I'm sure it stems from you discovering it, and putting the time in for it. But what a wonderful way that you've done for that. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you. Again, I look forward to joining us next time as we dive into the group scales. Until then, this was the Prestigious Initiative.